This is a true-to-life family drama told from a father's point of view. I'm a widowed black father in my 60s. I raised my daughter to be independent, thoughtful, and strong. When she got engaged, I believed she was marrying into a good family. Polite, successful, respected. Everything looked perfect on the surface. But at her wedding, something happened that changed the way I saw everything. What followed wasn't physical violence. There were no bruises, no screaming matches. Instead, it was control wrapped in politeness. Silence used as punishment. Rules disguised as standards. A slow erasing of my daughter's voice. This story is about the moments most people don't talk about. The small humiliations, the quiet fear, the way love can slowly turn into something that feels like a cage. It's about a father trying to protect his child without taking her choices away. And it's about what happens when protection comes too late, or just in time. If you've ever watched someone you love change in a relationship and couldn't explain why it felt wrong, this story may sound familiar. This is not a fairy tale. There is no instant rescue. Just truth, choices, and consequences. Thank you for listening. I knew something was wrong the second my daughter smiled. Not a real smile. Not the kind that lifts your cheeks and reaches your eyes. This one was the kind people put on when they're trying to survive a room. The kind you wear like armor. My baby girl, Naomi, stood there in a soft cream dress she'd picked because she said it looked calm, and she held a gift box in both hands like it might explode. Everybody around her was laughing in that polite, expensive way, like the joke was too good to say out loud. And Naomi laughed too. I'm Darius Coleman. I'm 60 years old. I'm a black man from Atlanta, born and raised on the South Side, the kind of man who learned early that you can work your whole life and still have folks look at you like you're not supposed to be in the building. I've done shipping, logistics, union work, warehouse management, whatever kept food on the table. I've been a widower long enough that people stop asking how you're holding up and start assuming you're fine. But I've never been fine when it comes to my daughter. Naomi is 27. She's smart in a quiet way. Not loud smart, not, let me prove it, smart. She's the kind of smart that pays attention. The kind that reads the room before she speaks. She got that from her mother. God rest her soul. Naomi's mother used to tell her, "Your voice is a gift, baby. Don't let anybody make you wrap it up and put it away." Tonight, at this rehearsal dinner, I watched my daughter wrap her voice up right in front of me. It was held at a country club in Buckhead. I had to ask the valet where the entrance was because everything out there looks like it was designed to keep you guessing. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and old money. The walls had framed photos of golf tournaments and wedding parties, all smiling faces that looked like they belonged there. Naomi had warned me, "Dad, it's gonna be a lot." She said it like she was talking about weather. The Whitmores were hosting. That's Grant's family. Grant Whitmore, 33. Tall, clean-cut, with that practiced softness in his voice. The kind of man who says, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," and makes you think he was raised right. The kind of man who shakes your hand like he's sealing a deal, not meeting his future father-in-law. Naomi met him at a fundraiser. She told me he was kind. She told me he listened. She told me he made her feel safe. Safe. That word used to settle my nerves. Tonight it sat in my stomach like a stone. At the dinner, there were place cards. Actual place cards. Mine said, "Mr. Coleman," in curly gold writing. I sat where they told me to sit. Evelyn Whitmore, Grant's mother, floated around the room in a pale blue suit like she owned the oxygen. 68, always perfectly put together. Hair smooth, makeup flawless, pearls sitting at her throat like a warning. She would touch people lightly on the arm when she spoke, but her eyes didn't warm up. Her eyes measured. She came to my table, smiled with her mouth, and said, "Darius, we're so grateful you could join us." I noticed she didn't call me Mr. Coleman, just Darius, like we were friends, like she had earned familiarity. "Thank you for having me," I said. She tilted her head, like she was studying how my words landed. "You must be so proud of Naomi." "I am," I said. "Every day." Evelyn's smile held. "She's very fortunate. Grant will provide a wonderful life for her." Provide. Not build with. Not share. Provide. I looked across the room and saw Naomi standing beside Grant. My daughter was glowing the way brides do when they're trying to hold onto the dream. Grant had his hand at the small of her back. It looked protective. It looked sweet. It also looked like placement, like positioning. Dinner went on. Speeches were made. People laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Grant's friends talked about skiing and investment properties and how the traffic in Miami was unbearable. I kept my face neutral and nodded when I had to. I've been the only black man at a table before. I know how to blend without disappearing. Still, I could feel it. The air was different around me. Not hostile, just dismissive, like I was a guest in somebody else's story. Then Evelyn stood up and tapped her glass. The room quieted the way rich rooms do, fast, obedient. Grant looked at his mother with a little smile like he already knew the punchline. Naomi turned too, smiling, trusting. That's what hurt. My daughter trusted this moment. Evelyn held up a small box wrapped in cream paper, tied with a navy ribbon. She spoke loud enough for everybody to hear. "My dear Naomi," she said, "welcome to our family. We believe in traditions. We believe in standards. And we believe in helping a young bride step into her role with grace." Somebody chuckled. A woman near the window, one of Evelyn's friends, leaned in like she couldn't wait. Evelyn handed Naomi the box. Naomi opened it carefully, like she didn't want to crease the ribbon. Inside was a leather-bound book with gold lettering on the cover. I could see it from where I sat. Country Club Wife Handbook. There was also an apron folded beneath it, white, crisp, embroidered in neat blue thread. Mrs. Whitmore. House Standards. For half a second, the room went silent. Not because they were shocked, because they were waiting. Waiting to see if Naomi would laugh. Waiting to see if I would react. Waiting to see if the joke would land. Grant laughed first. Not loud. Just enough. Like giving permission. "Oh, Mom," he said, smiling wide. "That's perfect. Perfect." Evelyn laughed lightly. "It's practical. Naomi will appreciate it." Naomi's fingers tightened around the apron. Her smile froze. She glanced at me, quick, sharp, and in that glance I saw the whole truth. "Dad, please don't do this. Please don't ruin this. Please let me get through tonight." I stood up anyway. I didn't mean to. My body moved before my pride could talk me out of it. My chair scraped the floor, just a little. Heads turned. Evelyn looked at me, still smiling, like I was an interruption. I opened my mouth, ready to say something I wouldn't be able to take back. Then Naomi's eyes pleaded again, and I sat down. I sat down like a coward. The room exhaled. People laughed again, relieved, like the threat had passed. Naomi forced a laugh, the kind you make when your throat is tight. Grant kissed her cheek, like he'd saved her from something. Evelyn watched it all like a queen watching a servant learn her place. And I sat there with my hands folded on the table, feeling heat crawl up my neck, feeling shame settle behind my ribs. Because the gift wasn't just a gift. It was a message. It was Evelyn standing in front of everybody, putting a collar on my daughter in the softest way possible. It was Grant echoing it, perfect, like he was proud of the joke. Like he agreed. Like Naomi's role wasn't a partnership, but an assignment. After the speeches, Naomi came over to my table. She leaned down, hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "Dad, please. It's fine. Just, please." Her voice shook. She smelled like vanilla and nerves. I wanted to tell her it wasn't fine. I wanted to pull her out of that room and take her home. I wanted to say, "Baby, you don't have to marry into people who laugh at you." But I didn't. I patted her hand and said, "I'm here. Always." She nodded like she heard me, but her eyes drifted back to Grant like she needed to check his mood, like she needed to make sure she hadn't upset him by being too close to me for too long. That's when it hit me, hard and cold. My daughter was already adjusting herself. Not after the wedding. Not later. Not someday. Right there, the night before, in a room full of chandeliers and polite smiles, my daughter was learning how to shrink. I left early. I told Naomi I had work in the morning. That part was true. But the real reason was I couldn't sit there another second pretending this was normal. Outside, the air was warm and heavy, Atlanta summer hanging around like it always does. I stood by my car for a long minute, keys in my hand, not getting in, just breathing like I'd been running. And in that stillness, I made a decision I hadn't told anyone, not even Naomi. Months ago, after the first time Evelyn looked at my daughter like she was an employee being evaluated, I'd started putting money aside. Quietly. I'd sold things I didn't talk about. I'd made phone calls I didn't mention. I'd set up something legal, something solid, something that didn't depend on Grant's love or Evelyn's approval. A safety net with a lock and a key. Because I knew, deep down, that a smile like Naomi's doesn't come from nowhere. And I had a feeling, no, I had a certainty, that tomorrow, at that wedding, they were going to try to put my daughter in her place again. This time, I promised myself, she wouldn't be standing there empty-handed. The next day, I woke up before my alarm, same way I used to when Naomi was little and I didn't have the luxury of sleeping in. The apartment was quiet. The air felt thick, like a storm was waiting somewhere off in the distance. I stood in my kitchen in a t-shirt and socks, staring at my own hands on the counter like they belonged to somebody else. 60 years on this earth, and I still get that feeling sometimes, like life can flip on you fast, like you can do everything right and still be standing there helpless. I made coffee the way my wife taught me, strong and plain. I didn't turn on any music. I didn't need more noise in my head. I checked my phone. No message from Naomi. Nothing from Grant either. That was normal. The Whitmores weren't big on checking in unless it was about logistics. Location. Timing. Seating. Optics. I sat at my small table and looked at the blue velvet box I'd placed by my keys the night before. It didn't look like much. Just a box. But everything inside it had cost me something. Money, yes. Pride too. Time. Sleep. I picked it up, set it back down, then picked it up again like I needed to remind myself it was real. I wasn't doing this to make a scene. I kept telling myself that. I wasn't trying to embarrass anybody. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to make sure my daughter never ended up stuck somewhere she had to beg to breathe. I left early for the venue. The wedding was at a big estate outside the city. White columns, manicured hedges, long gravel driveway that crunched under your tires like a warning. Staff in black and white moved around like they were part of the decorations. The kind of place where even the air feels expensive. I parked, straightened my tie, and sat in the car for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. I whispered my wife's name under my breath, just once, like a prayer. Then I got out. Inside, everything was soft lighting and flowers. Naomi had told me she wanted something simple and elegant, but what the Whitmores heard was lavish but tasteful. White roses everywhere, blue hydrangeas, gold accents. The scent hit you first, sweet, heavy, almost too much. I saw Naomi before she saw me. She was in a side room with two bridesmaids and a stylist fixing the veil. When she turned, her face lit up for a second, real this time, and it made my chest hurt. She looked beautiful. Not just in the dress, though the dress was something out of a magazine. It was the way she carried herself, like she was trying hard to stay steady. She walked over and hugged me tight. "Dad," she whispered, like she needed to make sure I was really there. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm not going anywhere." She pulled back and looked at me, eyes shining, and I could see the stress sitting right behind her smile. I lowered my voice. "You okay?" She nodded too fast. "Yeah. Just a lot happening." Then her eyes flicked past me, quick. I followed her glance and saw Evelyn in the doorway. Evelyn wasn't dressed like a mother of the groom. She was dressed like a headline. Cream suit, pearls, hair perfect, face calm. She looked at Naomi the way you look at a house you just bought, pleased, but already thinking about renovations. She looked at me too, and her smile slid into place like a mask. "Darius," she said, "we made it. Like we were all on the same team." "Morning," I said. My voice stayed polite. My body didn't. Every muscle in me was tight. Evelyn stepped into the room, kissed Naomi's cheek, and said, loud enough for the bridesmaids to hear, "Remember, sweetheart, chin up, shoulders back. A Whitmore bride is always composed." Naomi's smile tightened again. "Yes, Ms. Whitmore," she said. "Not Evelyn. Not Mom. Ms. Whitmore." That alone told me everything. I kissed Naomi's forehead and told her I'd see her out there. As I walked away, I heard Evelyn say, "And please don't let your father hover too much. It makes people uncomfortable." Naomi didn't answer. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I'll give them that. The music, the sun filtering through trees, everybody dressed like they were going to a gala. Naomi walked down the aisle, and when she reached the front, I watched Grant's face. He smiled, but it wasn't soft. It looked satisfied, like he was watching something fall into place. They said their vows. Naomi's voice shook a little, but she got through it. Grant spoke like he was reading something he'd practiced in the mirror. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd clapped and stood. Naomi looked relieved for half a second, like she thought the hardest part was over. I knew better. The reception started right after. Cocktail hour on a lawn so perfect it didn't look real. People held glasses that cost more than my first car. I moved through the crowd like I belonged, because I've spent my whole life learning how to do that. Folks smiled at me, asked polite questions, then drifted away when they realized I wasn't connected to their business world. A few older black couples came up and congratulated me, and I felt my shoulders drop for the first time all day. "Your baby looks gorgeous," one woman told me. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it like a prayer. Naomi floated around taking pictures, hugging relatives, doing what brides do. But every time she stopped, every time there was a pause, she looked toward Grant like she was checking the temperature of the room through him. Grant stayed close. Hand on her waist. Hand on her back. Always guiding. Always steering. At one point, I watched him whisper something in her ear. Naomi's smile faltered. She nodded, then walked away toward a group of Grant's friends like she'd been assigned. That's what it felt like. Assigned. I kept my eyes open. I kept my mouth shut. Not because I agreed with any of it. Because I was waiting. Dinner was served inside a ballroom with chandeliers and white linens and a stage for the band. The seating chart put me at a table near the back, not far from the kitchen doors. I didn't miss that. I also didn't miss that Evelyn's friends, women with tight smiles and expensive handbags, kept glancing my way like I was a detail they couldn't quite place. Naomi sat at the head table with Grant and the Whitmores. She looked like a doll displayed in a storefront. Pretty. Perfect. Trapped. Toasts happened. Grant's best man talked about college stories. Laughter. Evelyn stood and made a speech about welcoming Naomi into a family of tradition. She used words like legacy and standards and said Naomi was so lucky to be chosen. Chosen. Like this was a job offer. Naomi clapped politely. Her eyes found mine for a second, and in that second I could see she was tired. Not just tired from the wedding. Tired in her bones. Then came the gifts. I didn't know they were doing gifts publicly, like a show. Somebody announced it like it was entertainment. A few special tokens for the newlyweds, the MC said. People perked up. Phones came out. Naomi's smile returned, careful and practiced. Evelyn stood first, of course. She walked up with a large box wrapped in glossy white paper, navy ribbon, a bow so perfect it looked machine-made. Grant leaned forward, already smiling, like he knew what it was. That alone made my stomach turn. Evelyn faced the room, holding the box like a prize. "We believe a strong home is built on structure," she said. "And we believe every wife should feel supported in running her household properly." She handed the box to Naomi. "Open it, sweetheart." Naomi's hands trembled just slightly. She started untying the ribbon. Grant put a hand over hers like he was helping, but it looked more like control. Naomi lifted the lid. Inside was a uniform. A crisp black dress with a white apron, folded neatly. A little embroidered name tag pinned to it, Naomi Whitmore. Under it was a binder labeled Household Standards, the Whitmore Way. The room went quiet again. Not shocked quiet. Expectant quiet. The kind of quiet where everybody is waiting to see if you're going to swallow the humiliation or choke on it. Naomi froze. I saw her throat move as she swallowed. Her eyes watered fast, like her body reacted before her pride could stop it. Evelyn laughed softly. "It's just practical," she said. "A young bride needs guidance." A few women laughed behind their napkins. Grant reached into the box, lifted the apron, and held it up like it was cute. "Perfect," he said, smiling wide. "She's gonna need this." Naomi's eyes squeezed shut for half a second. When she opened them, she was smiling again. That same smile from the night before. That survival smile. And something in me went cold. I stood up. My chair scraped the floor, loud enough that a few heads turned. Evelyn's smile faltered just a hair. Grant looked at me like I was an inconvenience. Naomi looked at me like she was begging me not to. And that's when I realized something that made me feel sick. My daughter wasn't just afraid of them. She was afraid of what they could make her lose if I spoke up. I walked toward the front anyway, slow, steady, like I wasn't angry, like I had time, like I wasn't shaking inside. I stopped beside Naomi. I looked at Evelyn first. "That's a interesting gift," I said, voice calm. "Real memorable." Evelyn tilted her head. "We aim to be helpful," she replied. I nodded once. Then I turned to my daughter. Naomi's lashes were wet. She was holding that apron like it weighed 100 pounds. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small blue velvet box. The room shifted. Phones lifted higher. The band stopped tuning. Even the servers paused like they could smell tension. I held the box out to Naomi. "Baby," I said, keeping my voice soft, "I got you something too." Naomi stared at it like she didn't understand. "Dad," she whispered. "Open it," I said. "Just open it." Naomi looked at the box in my hand like it wasn't real, like it had appeared out of nowhere and she didn't know the rules for touching it. Her fingers were still clutching that apron, the white fabric wrinkled now, no longer neat. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice clink in somebody's glass near the back. Grant's smile was still there, but it had gone stiff around the edges. Evelyn's eyes moved from the box to my face, quick and sharp, the way people look when they realize they might have miscalculated. "Dad," Naomi said again, softer this time. "Not a warning. A plea. You don't have to. I know what I don't have to do," I said gently. "And I know what I need to do." I placed the blue velvet box into her hands. I felt her fingers shaking against mine. For a second, she didn't move. The MC stood frozen off to the side, clearly unsure whether this was still part of the program. Cameras were up. People leaned forward in their seats. Nobody spoke. Grant cleared his throat. "Mr. Coleman," he said, smiling like he was trying to keep things light, "we can do this later. Let's not turn this into—" "Into what?" I asked, still calm. "A family moment?" Grant laughed, short and tight. "You know what I mean." I did know. He meant embarrassment. He meant disruption. He meant a black father stepping out of line at a white family's perfect event. But I also knew something else. I knew my daughter was standing there, holding a uniform meant to remind her where she stood. And I knew silence had already cost her enough. "Open it," I said again, this time looking straight at Naomi. She took a breath. I watched her shoulders rise and fall. Then she opened the box. Inside were papers, neatly folded, not flashy, not dramatic, just paper, the kind of thing people overlook until it's too late. On top was a single page with her name printed in black ink, Naomi Elise Coleman. Not Whitmore. The shift in the room was immediate. You could feel it, like pressure changing. Evelyn's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Grant leaned forward, his eyes scanning the page too fast, like he was trying to read from where he stood. He couldn't. But he knew what paper looks like when it matters. Naomi frowned, confused. "Dad, what is this?" I rested a hand on her arm. "It's something I put together for you. A while ago." Grant stepped closer. "If this is legal paperwork," he said, voice still smooth but lower now, "we should really discuss this privately." Evelyn's hand came down on his arm, firm. "Grant," she said, warning in her tone. Then she looked at me. "Darius, I'm sure you meant well, but this isn't appropriate." I met her eyes. "It's appropriate when somebody tries to give my daughter a uniform at her own wedding." A few gasps slipped out before people could stop themselves. Naomi's head snapped up. Her eyes met mine, wide now. Hurt. Confused. Afraid. "Dad," she said, "what are you talking about?" I turned back to her. "What I'm giving you isn't something to wear," I said. "It's something to stand on." Grant's jaw tightened. "Naomi," he said quickly, "don't let this distract you. We can talk about whatever this is later." I watched my daughter look between us. I saw the pull, the habit, the instinct to keep the peace even if it costs her breath. I leaned in closer, lowered my voice so only she could hear me. "Baby, you don't have to decide anything right now. Just listen." She nodded, barely. I straightened and addressed the room, not raising my voice, not performing, just speaking. I grew up watching women in my family lose everything because they trusted the wrong setup. They loved hard. They worked hard. And when things went bad, they had nowhere to land. I promised myself that wouldn't happen to my child. Grant let out a sharp breath. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. I ignored him. "What's in that box," I continued, "is a trust. One I set up in Naomi's name. Irrevocable. It means no one can touch it but her. Not me. Not a husband. Not a family that thinks love comes with conditions." The word husband hung in the air like smoke. Naomi's hands tightened on the papers. "A trust," she whispered. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel like you were walking into your marriage already braced for a fall," I said. "I wanted you to believe in love. I just didn't want you unprotected." Grant stepped fully between us now. His politeness was cracking. "You had no right," he said. "This affects both of us." I looked at him. Really looked. The way his shoulders squared. The way his voice hardened when things stopped going his way. "It affects my daughter," I said. "That's who it affects." Evelyn moved closer too. She smiled, but there was steel underneath now. "Naomi," she said sweetly, "you don't need this. Grant provides very well. We've taken care of everything." Naomi looked down at the papers again. Her brow creased as she read the first few lines, slow, like she wasn't used to legal language. Her lips moved silently. I recognized that look. It was the look she used to get when she was little and working through a hard math problem. Focused. Serious. Herself. "I didn't know," Naomi said quietly. "I didn't know this was even possible." Grant reached for her hand. "Baby, you don't need paperwork to know I've got you." She didn't pull away. But she didn't squeeze back either. I felt something shift then. Not victory. Not relief. Just a crack. A small one. Enough for air to get in. Evelyn laughed lightly, trying to smooth things over. "Well," she said, "this has certainly been unexpected. Why don't we all take a breath? This is supposed to be a celebration." Naomi looked up at her. "A celebration of what?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but the question landed heavy. Evelyn blinked. Grant shot Naomi a look, sharp, warning. I saw it. Naomi saw it too. She flinched before she could stop herself. And that flinch told me everything I needed to know. The MC cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we can move on to the next." "No," Grant said suddenly. "We're not moving on." All eyes snapped to him. His face was tight now, the pleasant mask gone. "This," he said, gesturing at the box, the papers, me, "is something Naomi and I will handle. Privately." Naomi swallowed. "Grant," he turned to her, smiling again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's go talk," he said. Not asked. Told. I stepped forward without thinking. She's staying right here. Grant's head snapped toward me. Excuse me. I kept my voice level. If she wants to talk, she can talk here. Or later. On her terms. The silence that followed was heavy. People shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The band members pretended not to watch while watching everything. Naomi looked between us again. Her breath came faster now. I could see the weight of the room pressing in on her. This wasn't just about papers. It was about who she was allowed to be in public. About whether she was allowed to disagree. Finally, she spoke. I need a minute. Grant's hand tightened on her arm. Not enough to bruise. Enough to claim. I noticed. And so did Evelyn. She said nothing. Naomi gently pulled her arm free. It was a small movement. Barely noticeable. But it was the first time I'd seen her do that all day. I'm going to step outside, Naomi said. I need air. Grant hesitated. The room waited. Then he nodded, sharp. I'll come with you. Naomi shook her head. I need to go alone. Another crack. I watched them walk toward the doors. Naomi ahead, Grant a step behind, his smile gone, his jaw clenched. Evelyn followed them with her eyes, calculating. I stood there with empty hands and a full chest, knowing I'd just thrown a stone into still water and the ripples were only beginning. As the doors closed behind my daughter, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The papers had done their job. They'd changed the room. They'd changed the balance. And people who are used to control don't lose it quietly. Naomi didn't look back when she pushed through those doors. She just walked out into the night air like she'd been holding her breath all day and finally remembered she had lungs. I stayed inside because I knew if I followed, Grant would make it about me. He'd turn it into a tug of war, and Naomi would get pulled in the middle like she always did when people around her wanted control more than they wanted peace. The room started moving again the second she left. The MC tried to restart the program. The band picked up a soft song like they could play the tension away. People acted like they hadn't just watched a young bride get handed a maid uniform with her name stitched on it. The Whitmores were good at that, pretending something didn't happen if it didn't fit the story they were selling. Evelyn drifted back to her table with that same smooth face, like nothing had cracked. But I saw it in her hands. She kept adjusting her napkin, folding it, unfolding it. Small, controlled movements. That's what rich anger looks like when it's wearing pearls. Grant stayed near the doors, watching the hallway Naomi disappeared into. He wasn't checking on her. He was waiting. Waiting for her to come back so he could decide what she was allowed to feel. I sat down in the chair they'd assigned me near the kitchen and let my palms rest on my thighs so nobody could see them shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. From the realization that I'd just done what I promised myself I would do, and it still might not be enough. A few people came up to me, quiet, careful. One older man in a grey suit leaned in and said, "That was bold." He didn't sound impressed or offended. He sounded like he was witnessing weather. I nodded once. I wasn't trying to be bold. He glanced toward Evelyn. "You know that family doesn't like surprises. Then they shouldn't hand out humiliations like party favors," I said. He gave a thin smile and walked away. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The music played. Plates were cleared. People laughed too loudly at nothing. I couldn't focus on any of it, because my eyes kept cutting toward those doors like a reflex. Finally, Naomi came back in. She walked slower now. Her shoulders were still squared like she was trying to hold herself upright, but her face looked different, like she'd cried and wiped it off fast. She wasn't alone. Grant was behind her, close enough that his shadow touched her. He had his smile back, the polite one, but his eyes stayed locked on her like she was a problem he was managing. They returned to the head table. Naomi sat down. Grant leaned in and said something in her ear. Naomi nodded, small. Then she reached for her water glass with both hands like it was grounding her. Evelyn leaned toward Naomi too, and I watched that conversation without hearing it. Evelyn's lips moved slowly, like she was choosing every word for maximum impact. Naomi's face didn't change much, but her fingers tightened around the glass until her knuckles went pale. I didn't get up. I didn't interrupt. I'd already made my point in public. Anything else would just give them an excuse to paint me as the angry black father who ruined their beautiful day. I wasn't going to hand them that narrative. The reception ended early. Not officially. Nobody announced it. But you could feel the energy sink. People started making excuses, checking watches, hugging goodbye. The band kept playing, but it sounded like background noise at a funeral. When it was time for Naomi and Grant to leave, they stood at the front while guests threw petals outside. Naomi was in a different dress now, simple, white, more comfortable. She looked like she'd shrunk inside herself. Grant looked crisp, composed, in charge. Evelyn went in for a final hug, and I saw her whisper into Naomi's ear. Naomi's face tightened, then she forced a smile again. Evelyn kissed her cheek, then turned toward me. "Darius," she said, voice low, pleasant. "We'll talk soon." I held her gaze. "If Naomi wants to talk, I'll be available." Her smile stayed in place. "Of course." Then she walked away like she'd won something. Grant's father, Charles Whitmore, had barely spoken all night. If he was there, he was mostly a presence in an expensive suit. But as Naomi and Grant walked toward the car, he paused near me. He looked older up close. Not just age, but tiredness. The kind that settles in after decades of letting the loudest person in the room run the house. He cleared his throat. "I heard what you said," he murmured. "I didn't answer right away. I didn't trust myself to." He continued, still quiet. "I didn't protect my daughter the way you protected yours. That caught me." My eyes snapped to him. "Your daughter?" He nodded once, tight. "Evelyn's not the only mother in this family. My girl, she married young. Gave up her work. Gave up her freedom." His jaw worked like he was chewing regret. "She paid for it." I thought about the way Evelyn carried herself, like control was her language of love. I looked at Charles and saw a man who'd lived under that language for a long time. He exhaled. "Don't let Naomi get cornered into thinking she owes anybody her whole life just because she married their son." I didn't soften. Not fully. But I heard the truth in his voice. "I'm trying," I said. "I know," he replied. Then he walked away before anyone could see he'd said anything human. Outside, Naomi stood by the car, black sedan, gleaming, ribbon on the hood. Grant opened the door for her, smiling for the cameras. Naomi turned just enough to look back at me. Her eyes were glassy. She mouthed, "I love you." I nodded. "Call me when you get there." Grant's smile twitched at that. He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened. Naomi slid into the passenger seat. Grant got in on the driver's side. They waved. The car rolled forward. People cheered like this was all normal. I watched the taillights disappear down the driveway, and I stayed standing there until the last red dot faded into the dark. Back home, my place felt smaller than usual, quiet in the wrong way. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on my couch, still in my suit, shoes on, because I didn't feel ready to be comfortable. My phone stayed on the cushion beside me. I kept staring at it like I could make it ring. It rang at 2:13 a.m. Naomi's name on the screen. I answered immediately. "Baby." Her breath came through first. Then her voice, small and shaken. "Dad, we got to the hotel. You okay?" I asked, sitting up fast. A pause. Then, "Grant is. He's mad." "Mad how?" Another pause, longer this time. I could hear the hum of hotel air conditioning on her end, faint. "He hasn't really spoken to me since we left." The words hit me like a slap. Not yelling. Not insults. Something colder. Punishment. "Naomi," I said carefully, "where are you right now?" "In the room," she whispered. "He's in the bathroom." I didn't want him to hear me calling. I closed my eyes and forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong." "He said I embarrassed him," she said. "He said my dad." She stopped, like she didn't want to repeat it, like the words tasted bad. "Say it," I told her softly. "I need to know what he's saying." She swallowed. "He said you tried to mark territory. Like I'm property. Like you don't trust him." My grip tightened on the phone. "And what did you say?" "I didn't know what to say," she admitted. "I kept apologizing, and he just stared at me. Then he said if I'm going to let you run our marriage, we might as well end it now." My chest went tight. I kept my voice low. "That's not love, Naomi. That's control." "I don't know," she whispered, and I heard tears in her throat. "It's our wedding night. I'm supposed to be happy." "I know," I said. "But hear me. The first time somebody uses silence to punish you, that's a message. The first time somebody makes you feel guilty for being protected, that's a message too." She sniffed. "What do I do?" I took a breath. "Right now. You keep yourself safe. You keep your phone charged. You keep your keys where you can reach them. And you call me any time, no matter the hour." She went quiet, like she was listening for the bathroom door. "Naomi," I said, "I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If he starts yelling, if he blocks you from leaving, if he scares you in any way, you call me and you get out. You hear me?" A beat. Then she whispered, "Okay." I heard the bathroom door open on her end. Naomi's breathing changed, shallow and quick. "I have to go," she said. "Call me tomorrow," I told her fast. "Even if it's just 1 minute." "I will," she whispered. "I love you." "I love you more," I said. The line went dead, and I sat there in my dark apartment with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing, knowing in my bones that the real marriage had just started, right there in that hotel room in the silence. The next morning, I woke up on my couch like I'd never gone to bed. My suit jacket was on the chair. My tie was still hanging off the lamp like it had given up halfway. I stared at my phone and waited for it to buzz again. It didn't. So I did what parents do when they can't help but still have to function. I made coffee. I washed a mug that was already clean. I paced from the kitchen to the living room and back like movement could change reality. By late morning, Naomi texted, "We're okay. Just tired. Love you." That was it. No, he apologized. No, he calmed down. No, it was a misunderstanding. Just okay. The word people use when they're trying to keep something from spilling. I typed back fast. Call when you can. Even 2 minutes. She didn't call. Over the next few days, the updates came in pieces. Small, cautious phone calls that ended quickly. I could hear hotel sounds in the background. Voices in a hallway. A TV playing too loud. The clink of a glass. Once I heard Grant's voice faintly, sharp like a knife dragged across a plate, and Naomi lowered her own voice immediately, like her body already knew to shrink. "How's the beach?" I asked on day 2, trying to sound normal. "It's pretty," she said. Then she paused. "Grant doesn't really want to go down there much. He says it's crowded." "It's a resort," I said. "It's supposed to be crowded." She gave a small laugh that didn't reach anything. "Yeah." Day 3, she told me they'd gone to dinner, but Grant barely ate. He kept checking his phone. When she tried to talk about the wedding, he cut her off. "He said we're not discussing it," she told me. "He said it's over." "And it is," I said. "The wedding is done. But what happened matters." Naomi didn't answer right away. Then she said, "He keeps saying the same thing, Dad." "What thing?" "That you don't trust him. That you wanted to plant something in my life, so I'd always have one foot out the door." I leaned back against my kitchen counter and closed my eyes. "Having a door doesn't mean you're leaving," I said. "It means you're not trapped." Naomi exhaled, shaky. "He says a wife shouldn't need that. And I say a husband shouldn't be threatened by it," I replied. She went quiet. Then, like she was speaking from somewhere deeper than her mouth, she whispered, "Sometimes I don't recognize him." That line sat in my chest like a weight. "Naomi," I said, careful, "you're allowed to tell the truth, even if it's ugly. Especially then." She swallowed. "He wasn't like this before." "No," I said. "Before, he was trying to win you. Now he thinks he has you." The call ended fast because Grant walked in, or so she said. She always had a reason. I stopped pushing for details, not because I didn't want them, but because I didn't want her to feel like she had to perform her pain for me to believe it. On the 5th day, my phone rang in the afternoon. Naomi's name lit up my screen, and my heart dropped before I even answered. "Baby," I said. She didn't speak at first. I heard her breathing and the faint sound of water, maybe a pool, maybe a fountain in the lobby. "Dad," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." My grip tightened. "Okay, tell me." "We fought," she said. "Like, really fought." I kept my voice steady. "What happened?" She took a breath like she was about to step off a ledge. "He said your gift was manipulation. He said you're trying to turn me against him." "That's not what it was." "I know," she said quickly. "I told him that. I told him you were protecting me. And then he said," her voice cracked, "he said if I'm really his wife, I should prove it." "Prove it how?" I already knew, but I needed to hear it. "He wants me to sell the townhouse," she said. "He wants me to put the money into a joint account with him. He said if I don't, it means I don't trust him. And if I don't trust him, then why did we get married?" I stared at the wall like it might answer for me. "Naomi," I said slowly, "that's coercion." She sniffed. "I told him I needed time. He didn't like that. He slept on the couch last night. In the suite." Her voice got smaller. "He hasn't touched me since we left the venue. He barely looks at me." I felt anger, hot and immediate, but I kept it buried where it wouldn't scare her. Listen to me, I said. Trust is not handing over your safety. Trust is not signing away your leverage. And love, real love, doesn't demand proof that looks like surrender. But what if he's right? She whispered. What if marriage really is giving everything? I took a breath, careful. If marriage is giving everything, I said, then it should go both ways. Ask yourself, what has he offered to put in your name? What has he offered to risk? Silence. Naomi, I said, tell me the truth. Are you afraid of him? A long pause. Then she whispered, I'm afraid of what he becomes when he doesn't get his way. That answer was enough. What happens next? I asked. Our flight back is tomorrow, she said. He said we'll deal with it when we get home. I didn't like that. I didn't like anything about that sentence. Call me as soon as you land, I told her. Don't go anywhere without letting me know. Okay, she said. Dad, I feel stupid. Don't, I said immediately. You're not stupid. You're learning. And you're not alone. When she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my hands. The same hands I used to use to braid her hair when she was little. The same hands I used to hold her steady when she learned to ride a bike. I couldn't ride this part for her. I could only be close enough to catch her if she fell. The next day, I drove to the airport and waited. Evelyn was already there when I arrived, dressed like she was going to a luncheon, not picking up newlyweds who looked like they'd been through a storm. Grant's father stood beside her, quiet, his hands in his pockets, face unreadable. Evelyn didn't acknowledge me at first. Then she turned and smiled like we were old friends. Darius, she said, I trust you've had time to reflect. I've had time to worry about my daughter, I replied. Her smile tightened. Naomi is an adult now. Adults can still be mistreated, I said. Charles glanced at me then, just for a second, like he was registering I wasn't going to play along. When Naomi and Grant walked out of arrivals, I saw it immediately. They weren't walking together. Grant was a few steps ahead, rolling his suitcase like he owned the floor. Naomi followed behind, holding her bag close to her chest. Her face was calm, but her eyes looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with travel. She hugged me quickly. Too quickly. You okay? I asked under my breath. I'm okay, she said, but her voice didn't match the words. Grant shook Charles's hand, hugged Evelyn. He didn't look at me. Not once. In the parking lot, Evelyn stepped in front of Naomi like a director setting marks. Sweetheart, she said, we're having dinner tonight. We need to talk about arrangements. About where you two will live. Grant nodded instantly. Yeah, we should. Naomi's shoulders rose and fell. Then she said, clear and calm, No, thank you. I'm tired. I want to go home. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. Home where? Naomi didn't glance at me this time. She didn't look for permission. She lifted her chin and said, To my townhouse. Evelyn's smile slipped. Your townhouse, she repeated, like it was a dirty word. You mean that little arrangement your father made. Grant finally turned his head slightly, just enough to throw Naomi a look. Not loud, not public. But I saw it, the warning, and Naomi saw it too. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do in months. She held her ground. It's not an arrangement, she said, voice steady. It's my home. It's in my name. And that's where my husband and I will be staying. Grant's jaw clenched. Evelyn looked like she'd been slapped. Naomi kept going, quieter now but sharper. And if anyone has a problem with that, she said, eyes on Grant this time, then we have bigger problems than dinner plans. The air went still. Even the parking lot noise felt far away. And in that moment, standing under harsh airport lights with suitcases at our feet, I realized my daughter had finally said her first real sentence in a long time, one that belonged to her. From the airport, Grant drove like the road offended him. One hand on the wheel, the other tapping the BMW's console like he was trying to mute the whole day. Naomi sat in the passenger seat with her purse hugged to her stomach, quiet but not small. I followed behind in a taxi, watching their taillights and feeling that old parental panic, the kind you get when your child is in the car with someone you don't trust, and all you can do is keep up and pray the distance doesn't turn into a disaster. When we pulled into Naomi's townhouse complex, the sun was already sliding down, throwing that warm late-afternoon light on the brick and the small trees lining the sidewalk. The place looked exactly like it had when I first saw it. Modest, clean, safe. Not a mansion. Not a flex. Just a home. Naomi stepped out first and just stood there for a second, staring at the front door like she was trying to convince herself it was real. The door was solid wood, dark-stained, with a simple iron knocker. She ran her fingers over it, almost tender. "It's beautiful," she whispered, like she didn't want Grant to hear her claim it. I pulled the spare keys from my pocket and handed her the set with the small brass tag. "It's yours," I said low. "All yours." Grant slammed his trunk and yanked out the suitcases with that tight, impatient energy. He set them down harder than necessary. "Are we going inside, or are we doing a tour of the porch?" he said, voice clipped. Naomi flinched. Not dramatically. Just a quick little body reaction, like her nervous system had been trained. I pretended I didn't see it, because if I called it out right there, the fight would turn into a performance. Naomi unlocked the door and pushed it open. The inside smelled like fresh paint and new flooring, that clean, empty scent of a place that hasn't been lived in yet. Light came in through the front windows and landed on the hardwood like a promise. There wasn't much inside. No couch, no dining set, no rugs. I'd arranged the closing and the legal work, not the decorating. This wasn't meant to be fully set up on day one. It was meant to exist. It was meant to be there when she needed it. Naomi stepped in slowly, like she was afraid to scuff something. Her eyes moved across the living room, the open dining area, the kitchen beyond. "It feels quiet," she said. "Quiet is good," I told her. Grant walked in behind her, hands in his pockets, scanning the room like an inspector. "It's small," he said finally, as if he'd been waiting to deliver that verdict. "It's a townhouse," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, living room, kitchen, a little backyard patio. For 2 people, it's more than enough." He gave a short laugh like I'd said something naive. "My parents' condo in the city is bigger than this." Naomi turned toward him. "We're not living at your parents' condo," she said. "We're living here." Grant's face tightened. "Naomi," he said, like he was trying to sound patient, "we need to think long-term. You heard my mom. Polanco." He caught himself, then corrected, like he remembered he couldn't say it like that here. "The city. The schools. The access. We're not going to raise a family out here." I watched Naomi's shoulders stiffen at the word family, like it was a rope being tossed around her without her consent. "We don't even have furniture yet," she said. "We just got back." "Exactly," Grant replied. "So we do this the right way. We sell. We upgrade. We buy something that belongs to both of us." The way he said both made it sound like fairness, but it landed like possession. Naomi didn't answer right away. She walked into the kitchen instead, turning on the lights, opening a cabinet, closing it again, like she needed something to do with her hands to keep from shaking. I followed her in, keeping my voice low. "You don't have to decide anything today," I told her. "I know," she said, but her eyes said she felt like she did. Grant came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter like he lived there already. "Mr. Coleman," he said, and that polite voice was back, the one he used when he wanted to look reasonable. "I know you think you're helping, but you're not. You put a wedge in this marriage before it even started. I let a beat pass so I wouldn't answer from anger. A wedge is what you use to split something apart," I said. "This is a foundation, a safety net." He shook his head, smiling like I was a stubborn old man. A wife shouldn't need a safety net from her husband. Naomi's head snapped up at that. "Why would it bother you," she asked him, quiet but direct, "that I have something in my name?" Grant's smile faltered for half a second. Then he recovered. "Because it sends a message," he said, "that you're planning for the marriage to fail. Or," Naomi said, voice steadier now, "it sends a message that I'm not disposable." I felt my chest tighten, not with pride exactly, more like relief mixed with fear. Because when a controlling man hears a woman start talking like that, he doesn't usually soften. He escalates. Grant's eyes narrowed. "Don't talk to me like I'm some villain," he said. "I love you." "Love doesn't need leverage," Naomi replied. "And it doesn't need me to be smaller." That line landed hard, and for a moment nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant noise of a lawnmower somewhere outside. Grant's jaw worked like he was biting down on something bitter. "Fine," he said at last. "Let's see the rest." Naomi led us upstairs. The steps creaked slightly, normal house sounds, not the polished silence of a penthouse. The hallway opened to 3 doors. Naomi pushed open the first bedroom, small, bright, perfect for a nursery one day if she wanted that. She opened the second, a guest room or office. She paused at the third door, the primary bedroom, and I saw her hesitate like she was bracing for Grant to ruin it. She pushed it open anyway. Sunlight came through the balcony doors, spilling onto the floor. Naomi stepped onto the balcony and leaned against the railing. The view wasn't fancy. Just trees, rooftops, a slice of sky. But the air felt calmer up there. "This is what I imagined," she said softly. "Morning coffee. A little peace." Grant walked in behind her, looked around, and laughed. Dry, humorless. "Perfect," he said, and the way he repeated that word made my skin crawl because I'd heard it at the reception in a different form. "There isn't even enough closet space." "We can add a wardrobe," Naomi said, still on the balcony. "We can use the spare room. Or," Grant cut in, "we can sell it and buy something that makes sense." Naomi turned from the balcony, eyes tired but sharp. "We're not selling it." "Why not?" he shot back. "If you trusted me." "Stop," Naomi said, voice rising just a little. "Stop making everything about trust. This is mine. It's the first thing in my life that feels fully mine." Grant's face hardened. "So I don't get a say in where I live?" "You get a say," Naomi replied, and her voice shook, but she didn't back down. "You don't get a veto. And you don't get to guilt me into signing away what my dad worked for." The argument heated fast after that. Voices overlapping, Grant pressing, Naomi defending, the same pattern trying to form. Him pushing until she gave in, her trying to keep the peace. I stood there for a moment and realized my presence was turning it into a triangle. Naomi needed space to be a wife if she chose to stay one. She also needed room to notice what was happening without me being the obvious scapegoat. I cleared my throat. I'm going to head out, I said. Both of them looked at me. Naomi's eyes pleaded, like she wanted me to stay, and also didn't, because she didn't want Grant to be able to say I was controlling her. "Dad," she started. I raised a hand gently. "I'm not leaving you," I said. "I'm giving you room. But I'm one call away." I walked back downstairs, moving through the empty living room. At the kitchen sink, I set my spare keyring down, one extra set, just in case, then slid an envelope beside it. Inside was cash. Not a fortune. Just enough for basics. Groceries, towels, a lamp, whatever small things make a place feel livable. I didn't want it to look like charity, so I didn't make a speech. I just left it. Outside, the taxi was waiting. As I got in, I looked back through the front window and saw Naomi standing at the top of the stairs, watching me go. Grant's voice was low behind her, too low to hear, but I could see his posture, close, insistent. Naomi didn't move. She just stood there, hand on the railing, like she was holding on to something that wasn't wood at all. The driver pulled away, and the townhouse disappeared behind trees and parked cars. I stared out the window, heart heavy, knowing I'd just done the hardest thing a parent can do, step back, and I wasn't sure yet whether it was the right kind of hard. The first week after they moved into Naomi's townhouse, I told myself to breathe. I told myself new marriages are messy. People come back from a wedding and a trip, and they have to find their rhythm. I told myself Grant was probably embarrassed, probably stressed, probably adjusting. I told myself a lot of things, mostly because the truth felt like something I didn't want to hold too long in my hands. Naomi didn't call the next day. She texted late that night. "We're unpacking. I'm tired. Love you." Short. Polite. Like a co-worker closing an email. I wrote back, "I'm here. Always." 2 days later, she called on her lunch break. I could hear traffic behind her and that thin, careful tone she got when she was trying not to cry. "How's the house feeling?" I asked. "It's fine," she said. "Fine like fine, or fine like you don't want to talk about it?" A pause. Then a soft exhale. "Grant wants everything a certain way." "Like what?" "Furniture," she said. "He says we can't just buy anything. He wants specific brands. He keeps saying the house needs to look elevated." "Elevated," I repeated, tasting the word. "You got money for that?" She gave a tiny laugh. "Not really." "And what do you want?" I asked. Another pause. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just want it to feel like home. That should have been easy. That should have been the goal." But I could already hear the problem in it. Home meant comfort to Naomi, and it meant control to Grant. Over the next week, her calls got less frequent. When I reached out, she'd answer with little updates that didn't add up to a life. "We're shopping." "Grant's busy." "I'm tired." She sounded drained, but she kept insisting she was okay, like the word okay was a shield she could hold between us. Then I got a call from her friend, Marissa, one afternoon. "Mr. Coleman," she said, voice tight. "It's Marissa, Naomi's friend from college." "I know who you are," I said. "What's going on?" "She's not answering me," Marissa said. "Not like before. I've been texting, calling. She keeps saying she's busy, but it's been weeks." "That's not her." I held the phone to my ear and stared at my kitchen sink, empty but somehow accusing. "Have you seen her?" I asked. "I saw her at the grocery store yesterday," Marissa said, "and she looked different, thinner, and tired." I went up to her and she smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. Then Grant came out of nowhere. like he'd been watching. He put his hand on her back and steered her away from me, like she was a kid. My stomach tightened. Did she say anything? She just mouthed, "I'm fine," Marissa said. But she didn't look fine. I thanked her, hung up, and sat down hard in my chair. A part of me wanted to jump in my car and drive straight to that townhouse. Another part of me remembered Naomi's face at the airport when she stood up to Evelyn. How important it was that her voice be hers, not mine. I didn't want to become Grant's favorite excuse. But I also wasn't going to sit quietly while my daughter faded. So that Friday, I made a pot of food. Nothing fancy. Just something Naomi always loved. Big pot, slow cooked, the kind of meal that smells like somebody cares. I grabbed a stack of containers, a bag of fresh rolls, and I drove over without announcing it. When I pulled into the complex, I sat for a second with my hands on the steering wheel and watched the townhouse like it might tell me the truth through the windows. Curtains were drawn. It was still daylight, but the place looked dim. I walked up and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I could have left. I could have taken the hint. But I had that spare key, and the whole reason I kept it was for moments when my gut told me not to be polite. So I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air hit me first, stale, like the house hadn't been opened up in days. Everything looked arranged, not lived in. There was a grey couch in the living room, brand new, no throw pillows. A glass coffee table with nothing on it. A dining table with 4 matching chairs, all sharp lines and no warmth. No photos on the wall. No plants by the window. No little Naomi touches. It looked like a furniture showroom where nobody was allowed to sit down. "Naomi!" I called. A sound came from upstairs. Soft, like someone trying not to be heard. I moved up the steps fast. "Baby!" The primary bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it gently. Naomi was sitting on the floor near the bed, knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She had on an old t-shirt and sweatpants that looked like they'd been slept in. Her eyes were red and swollen, not teary, past tears. When she looked up at me, she blinked like she didn't recognize me at first. Then her face crumpled just slightly and she whispered, "Dad!" I set the food down in the hallway and sat on the floor beside her without asking. "What's going on?" I said quietly. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "Nothing." "Don't," I said, not harsh, just firm. "Don't do that. Not with me." She stared at the carpet for a long moment. Then she said, almost like she was confessing a crime, "Grant's not here." "Where is he?" "At his parents'," she said. "He went after work." "And you didn't go?" I asked, even though the answer was already on her face. She shook her head. "I'm not invited anymore." My chest tightened. "What do you mean, not invited?" Naomi swallowed. Evelyn said, "As long as we live in this house, I'm not welcome in hers." The words landed heavy in the room. I felt heat rise up my neck, but I kept my voice low because Naomi looked like she'd shatter if I raised it. "That's not normal," I said. Naomi gave a sad little shrug. "It's fine." "It's not fine," I corrected. "It's punishment." She didn't argue. That told me everything. I looked around the room. The dresser was bare. No makeup bag. No jewelry tray. The closet door was closed. The balcony curtains were drawn. It was like she'd tucked herself away inside her own house. I nodded toward the living room downstairs. "Why does it look like nobody lives here?" I asked. Naomi's mouth tightened. Grant doesn't want my stuff out. Your stuff, I repeated. Like what? My books, she said. My pictures. The quilt Grandma made. My little plants. He says it doesn't match the style. And what style is that? I asked. She didn't answer. She just stared down at her hands. I took a breath. Naomi, I said, this is your house. She flinched at the word you're like it was too big. But we live together, she whispered. I have to consider what he wants. Considering isn't disappearing, I said. Considering is compromise. It's not you erasing yourself so he can feel comfortable. Her eyes filled again, slow. I'm tired, she said. I'm so tired of arguing. I know, I said, and I meant it. But peace that costs you your voice isn't peace. We sat like that a moment, quiet. Then I stood and carried the food downstairs. I warmed it up while she sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. The kitchen looked different than the rest of the house. There were spices on the counter, a drying rack with dishes, a pot on the stove. Evidence of life. At least here, Naomi said softly, watching me. He lets me do what I want. I couldn't help it. The bitterness slipped out. How generous of him! Naomi's lips twitched, almost a smile, but more like recognition. We ate together at that too-clean dining table. The food helped her a little. She took a few real bites. I watched her shoulders drop half an inch, like warmth still had power. I miss you, she said suddenly, voice small. I miss living with you. I miss us just talking. I miss you too, I said. But I'm not far. And you're not trapped, Naomi. I need you to remember that. She nodded, but I could see she didn't fully believe it yet. Like she knew it in her mind, but not in her bones. A key turned in the front door at about 7. Naomi froze. Fork hovering. Eyes going wide. Grant walked in like he owned the oxygen. Suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, phone in his hand. He glanced at me and his face tightened. "Oh," he said flatly. "Didn't know we had company." "I brought dinner," I said calmly. Naomi looked like she needed it. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "I ate at my parents'." Then he looked at Naomi and added, "Real food." The insult hung there, ugly and obvious. Naomi lowered her eyes like she'd been slapped without being touched. I stood up and started stacking plates, because I didn't trust my mouth. "Well," I said, keeping my voice even, "I'm heading out." Naomi followed me to the door. Grant stayed in the dining room, scrolling his phone like none of this mattered. On the porch, Naomi grabbed my hand. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," I said. "Not to me." Her eyes were wet again. "I don't know how to do this." "You don't have to know everything today," I told her. "But you do have to call me if you're scared. Any time. You hear me?" She nodded fast. "Okay." I pulled her into a tight hug. "I love you," I said into her hair. "I love you too," she whispered. I walked back to my car, and when I got inside, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I drove off slow, like going too fast would make it worse. And once I hit the main road, I did the one thing I hadn't allowed myself to do in front of her. I cried. Quietly. The kind of cry you do when you realize your child is living in a cage that doesn't even look like bars yet, and you can't break it for them. You can only keep the door open and pray they walk through it before the lock clicks for good. After that Friday night, I tried to act normal. I went back to work. I paid my bills. I washed dishes. I watched the news. I did all the little routines that keep a person from spiraling, but the truth was, I was spiraling anyway, quietly, where nobody could see it. Because once you've walked into your child's home and it feels like a staged set, once you've seen their eyes swollen from crying they won't admit to, you don't unsee that. You don't go back to being relaxed. Naomi didn't call me the next day. She texted around noon. We're fine. Just busy. 2 sentences. No warmth. I read it 3 times like different readings might give me a different meaning. I almost drove over again. I didn't. I kept hearing her voice on that porch. I don't know how to do this. If I showed up every time my fear told me to, Grant would use it as proof that she couldn't detach, that she had no boundaries, that I was, in her head, controlling people love a convenient villain. I wasn't going to hand him one. Still, I watched the pattern. Naomi answered less. When she did answer, she sounded rushed, like she was speaking with someone else in the room. When I asked about her job, she'd say, "It's fine," but wouldn't tell me anything specific. No annoying coworker story, no new project, no little detail. That's how I knew it wasn't fine. Naomi always had details. Details were her way of staying human. 2 weeks passed like that, slow and tense. Then Marissa called me again. "She's not coming to anything," Marissa said. "We had brunch. She said she couldn't make it. We had movie night. Same thing. I asked if I could come by. She said Grant doesn't like visitors last minute. I stared out my living room window at a tree that had started dropping its leaves. "Does she sound scared?" I asked. Marissa hesitated. "She sounds careful." That word landed hard because careful is what you become when you're managing someone's moods. "Thank you," I told her. "Keep trying. Even if she doesn't answer. Keep the door open." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about how cages don't usually show up as cages. They show up as preferences, standards, space. They show up as someone telling you what's best for you until you forget your own voice. The next Saturday morning, my phone rang while I was standing over the sink, rinsing out my coffee mug. The number on the screen wasn't saved. Out-of-state area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered anyway. "Hello." There was a pause, then a man's voice, older, steady, tired. "Mr. Coleman." "Yes." "This is Richard Whitmore," he said. "Grant's father." I gripped the edge of the counter. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, measured. "What can I do for you?" "I'm not calling to argue," he said quickly, like he expected me to snap. "And I'm not calling on my wife's behalf. I'm calling as myself." I could hear it in his tone. This was not a family flex call. This was a man stepping out from behind a loud woman. "Okay," I said. "I'm listening." He exhaled. "I need to speak with you in person. Not over the phone. Is that possible today?" My first instinct was suspicion. My second was curiosity. Because men like Richard don't usually reach out unless something in them finally breaks. "Where?" I asked. "There's a coffee shop near the riverfront," he said. "Neutral place. Public. I'll bring my daughter as well." I blinked. "Your daughter?" "Yes," he said. "My oldest. Her name is Danielle. I didn't even know Grant had a sister. Naomi hadn't mentioned her once. That alone told me she wasn't allowed to become real in their world." "Why do you want me to meet your daughter?" I asked. "Because she asked," he said, and his voice cracked just slightly. She heard what happened at the wedding. The house. The paperwork. She wants to meet you. I didn't answer right away. My mind ran through possibilities. Setup, manipulation, some kind of attempt to corner me. Then I heard the exhaustion again in his voice, and it didn't sound like a scheme. It sounded like regret. "All right," I said. "Text me the address." We met that afternoon. I got there early. Habit. I ordered black coffee and sat where I could see the door. When Richard walked in, I recognized the posture immediately. A man who spent decades smoothing over other people's sharp edges. He looked like he carried weight in his shoulders he never set down. Behind him was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s. Slim, well-dressed, but the kind of well-dressed that feels like armor. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her face was calm in the way people get when they don't feel safe enough to be messy. Richard approached first. "Mr. Coleman," he said, holding out his hand. I shook it. "Richard." He gestured to the woman. "This is Danielle." Danielle sat across from me and folded her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned pale. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "Thank you for meeting us." "Of course," I said. "What's going on?" Richard started, then stopped, then looked at his daughter like he was giving her the floor. Danielle took a breath that shook on the way in. "My father told me what you did for Naomi," she said. "The townhouse. Putting it only in her name." I nodded once. "I did what I could." Danielle's eyes glistened, but she refused to let the tears fall. "I wish someone had done that for me," she said. Richard stared into his coffee like it could erase the past. "I should have," he said, barely audible. "I didn't." I leaned back slightly. "Danielle," I said gently, "what's happening in your life?" She swallowed. "I've been married 15 years," she said. "To a man who never hit me. Not once. But he has worn me down. Little by little. My voice. My confidence. My friends." Her words came out controlled, but the pain underneath them was clear. "When I got married, I had a career," she continued. "I worked. I had money of my own. He told me I didn't need to. He said it would be better if I stayed home, that I could focus on the marriage, on being a real wife. I believed him." She gave a bitter half-smile. "I thought love meant I should trust him." Richard's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to interrupt, to defend, to rewrite history. He didn't. He just listened. Danielle went on. "3 years ago I asked for a divorce," she said. "And that's when I found out what I really was in that house. I had nothing. The home was in his name. The accounts were in his name. The cars. Everything. I'd been out of work for over a decade. No recent experience. No savings. I wasn't trapped by chains. I was trapped by paperwork." The cafe noise faded around me. All I could hear was Naomi's voice from my porch. "I don't know how to do this." Danielle looked straight at me. "Your daughter has a house," she said. "That's good. That's protection. But protection doesn't always hold if someone talks you out of it. If someone makes you feel guilty for having it." I felt my stomach drop. "Is Naomi being pressured?" I asked. Danielle's gaze flicked to her father, then back to me. "I don't know everything," she said carefully, "but I know my brother. I know how he was raised. I know how my mother thinks. And I know how men like my husband start. They start with little requests, little guilt, little rules. They don't demand your life on day one. They take it in pieces. Richard finally lifted his head. His eyes were wet, and it made him look older than he probably was. "Grant is my son," he said, voice rough. "I love him. But I'm not blind. I'm scared for Naomi." I held my coffee mug and felt how cold it had gotten. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I don't want Naomi to end up like Danielle," Richard said. "Because I watched my wife excuse too much for too long. Because I stayed quiet too often. And now I'm trying late to do one thing right." Danielle reached across the table and rested her hand near mine, not touching, just close enough to be human. "Please," she said softly, "watch her. Not in a controlling way. In a steady way. Keep her connected to herself. Because if she starts believing she doesn't deserve her own life, the house won't matter." I nodded once, slow. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me." When we stood to leave, Richard hesitated like he wanted to say more, then finally did. "My wife is loud," he said. "She believes control is love. I've spent most of my marriage calling it something else so I could live with it." He swallowed. "Don't do that to your daughter." I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel. When I walked into my apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual. I stared at the photos on my wall. Naomi in braces, Naomi in her graduation cap, Naomi laughing with her head thrown back, and I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. Buying her that townhouse had been the first step. A foundation. A door. But a door doesn't help if the person inside has been taught they don't deserve to walk through it. That evening I called Naomi. It rang longer than usual. Then she answered, breathy, like she'd stepped into a closet to talk. "Hey, Dad," she said. "What's up?" I kept my voice calm, the way you do when you're trying not to scare someone deeper into hiding. "I just wanted to hear you," I said. "And I want you to know something. No matter what gets said around you, no matter how anybody tries to frame it, you still have options. You still have yourself." There was a long pause. Then, very softly, Naomi said, "Okay." I closed my eyes. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," she whispered. After we hung up, I sat alone in my living room and realized the truth I'd been avoiding. The house was never meant to be the ending. It was meant to be the beginning. And if Naomi was going to survive what was happening in that marriage, she wouldn't just need keys and paperwork. She would need her voice back. And I was going to have to help her find it, without taking it from her in the process.